Thank you for standing by and welcome to the Saracen Mineral Holdings 2020 June quarterly results conference call. All participants are in a listen-only mode. There will be a presentation followed by a question and answer session. If you wish to ask a question, you will need to press the star key followed by the number 1 on your telephone keypad. I would now like to hand the conference over to Mr. Raleigh Finlayson, Managing Director. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you all for joining us. For context, this is much of an update to our shareholders as it is a message to our people, all of our people, no matter what logo is on your shirt. So please bear with me. This is not the hardest thing I've had to do this week, but it's right up there. So thank you in advance for your patience and consideration. I'm joined today by Morgan Ball and Troy Irvin. Simon Jessett remains on site, where I've come from last night and to where I'll return on Thursday. We'll continue to tag team for as long as the team needs us on site. These are indeed very sad days at Saracen, with the passing of one of our underground contractor employees, but also one of our own. This is a sentiment from every person I've spoken to at Saracen this week. The accident at the Dervish mine was an absolute tragedy, and on behalf of Saracen's board and management, I extend my deepest condolences to his family, friends and colleagues. There are no positives to come out of this, but we have something to cling on to. This will enable us to carry on, and for us, the light at the end of the tunnel comes in a few forms. Firstly, the strength of our people. We are hurting. We are hurting because we care. We are a devastating, close-knit unit. There are so many people to thank for your leadership and support. You know who you are, but there are a few special mentions, in particularly during the aftermath and getting back on the bike. Jimmy O'Donnell, Chappie, Bitsy, Simon Jessett, Sammy Kosis, amongst many others. Secondly, the professionalism of our ERT team, led courageously by Nick. The team was unflappable in unmanageable and very trying circumstances. Thirdly, to the industry support, I've received texts and emails from just about every mining company within a 500-kilometre radius of Saracen Dam, offering their best wishes and support. I'm very proud of the industry, knowing that they have our backs. I'd like to make a special mention to our close friends at Northern Star, who immediately sent 2 surveyors from Jundee to assist with the site survey with a drone. Thank you to those 2 individuals. We spent the past week systematically pulling apart all aspects of our operations, including those completely unrelated to the incident, to ensure we review all principal hazards and critical controls led from the ground up from the operators. The Department of Mines remains ongoing with the investigation. I'd like to thank the investigation team for their professionalism and respect shown for our hurting people whilst we all search for answers. MRs have issued Saracen with a notice to assist. Saracen will work on an industry solution to find new ways to improve our industry critical controls. Findings of the task force will be made available to the industry via the MERS and other industry bodies. Again, thanks to our close-knit peers for stepping up to assist literally immediately. We are in the midst of a soft restart. Slowly, respectfully and carefully. We are getting back on the bike. I'd like to thank in particular those who played a pivotal role in the restart, in particular Lee, Josh, Champ, Speedy, Jimmy O, who are all hurting. They're illuminating the path forward for the rest of the team. Whilst we've resumed operations at Saracen Dam, it's obviously not business as usual. As such, we will not be following our usual format today. I'll provide a brief overview of the quarter, and then I'm available for questions at the end. All the relevant production and financial information is available in the quarterly release. I'd also like to mention up front that we're releasing comprehensive updates on all of our assets this quarter, initially with Saracen Dam and Thunderbox, followed by KCGM. Each of these will include drilling updates, our annual R&R, production and cost guidance. Taking a brief look at the quarter report, specifically pages 1 and 2, the June quarterly production of 145,830 ounces at an all-in sustaining cost of $11.52 per ounce. Productivity was the main focus at KCGM, with open pit mining increasing an impressive 49% versus the March quarter, underground ore tonnes increasing 25%, and processing throughput increasing 7%, all with significant reductions in unit cost per tonne as a result. FY20 group production of 520,000 ounces at an all-in sustaining cost of a nudge over $1,100 an ounce, ahead of FY20 guidance of 500,000 ounces. FY21 guidance of 600,000 ounces remains unchanged. To reiterate, Saracen will update production and cost outlooks for each of its operations later in the September quarter. Underlying cash flow generation for the quarter was $84 million, after spending $91 million on growth and exploration. Cash and bullion was $369 million at 30 June, up from $339 million at 31 March, after making debt repayments of $39 million and paying $16 million in tax. We returned to a net cash position of $48 million at 30 June 2020, up from a net debt position of $21 million at 31 March 2020. FY20 unaudited statutory NPAT is in a range of $190 to $200 million. We've been able to refocus back onto future-proofing the business after de-escalation of COVID in Western Australia, which sets us up well for the future. I'd now like to hand back to Rachel for the Q&A.
Thank you. If you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone and wait for your name to be announced. If you wish to cancel your request, please press star 2. If you are on a speakerphone, please pick up the handset to ask your question. The first question comes from Alex Barkley from Morgan Stanley. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Hi, Raleigh. Just a couple of questions on Carosue from me. Firstly, at Karari Dervish, the last couple of quarters, the grades have sort of fallen a bit below 3 grams per tonne. Were you expecting that to push a little bit higher to reserve at more like 3.2, or what you've done a bit earlier in the year? And secondly, do you have a clearer picture of what kind of ramp-up you're expecting at Deep South, given $1 million also coming online, and perhaps it might be a slower quarter at Karari Dervish right now? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. So we flagged last quarter the grade dip below reserve grade, so we have nudged back up to 2.8 grams this quarter. So we do expect that to continue. We obviously are seeing better grades at depth at both Karari and Dervish, so we will see that revert back to reserve grade. Deep South, we're very close to starting up within the next 2 or 3 weeks to really ramp up the stoping with the mining method there. So that will see a pickup, as we will see. Obviously, mining has commenced at $1 million, which will feed into the expanded mill.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Daniel Morgan from UBS. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Raleigh and Tim, and condolences for everything you're going through. Just on the operations, can you just provide a picture of where the restart is versus the various aspects, so the mill, the mines, and expectations from here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. So the milling restarted on the day of the announcement, whatever that was, a few days ago. So that's back up and running. Open pit mining started the same time, so all other operations have recommenced. As far as underground operations, it was around 2 days after that we had finished all of our updated risk assessments, critical controls, principal hazards, and we restarted jumbo development. And over the last 24 hours, we've recommenced all other activities except for those around open holes, which is obviously part of the task force investigation we're doing at the moment, which we're envisaging will be completed by the 31st of July.
And that last comment on open holes, that relates to both Karari and Dervish?
Yeah, it is, but just to be clear, that remote bogging of a standard stope, which is majority of our production, will be restarting before that. Okay, that's very clear. And on the accounting, I know you've called out a lot of stockpile issues in the quarter.
which will be a go-forward concern. Just trying to get a clear picture in my mind how that's going to work and has worked. You flagged, I think, about $60 million of non-cash items at the super pit from the stockpiles that has gone through the accounts. I think that might be separate to the tables that you provided in the release today. Is that true?
Hi, Daniel. It's Morgan here. Yeah, that is correct. So obviously, the tables we show in the release relate to our cash accruals during the month. In the P&L, we do have non-cash accruals in relation to our stockpiles, and we've identified, to give you some context, the cost of the KCGM stocks. We're tracking at around $400 to $500 an ounce on a cost basis, and in resetting the fair value, that's given the circumstances of the gold price and the purchase price, that's come up to about $1,000 an ounce. So as we draw down on those stocks going forward, that will be the expense that hits our P&L. So we're just giving people some context around that.
Yeah, awesome. I think it would be very good to make it clear going forward the cash cost versus that accrual item, because obviously it's the cash that we care about.
Sure, yeah.
So thank you.
We'll make that clear in the financial results that on the 18th of August.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Tim McCormack from Canaccord. Please go ahead.
Hi, guys. Sorry to hear about everything in this past week. Two questions from me. Essentially one around paste plants. I see you've committed to an extension at the Karari plant to Dervish, how that might impact how we think about extraction rates and things like that for that mine. And similarly, I see you've committed to a paste plant for Thunderbox Underground as well. And just on that, are we assuming that it's commercial production as from July 1 at the moment? The second part of the question is just around the super pit and what the go-forward balance of stockpiles versus all mined should be in a percentage kind of sense.
Yeah, so just with your first question around Dervish, so we'll obviously put out new, drill results, R&R and everything in early August on that one, so full details on how we see that asset ramping up will obviously be provided in that release, so not too far away from that one. Just as far as commercial production at Thunderbox Underground, looking at 1st of April 2021 is the slated date for that as it stands at the moment. So that'll be a little bit more of a ramp up before we declare commercial on that asset. And sorry, Tim, just your last question on KCGM.
Just looking at the proportion of stockpiles that are going into the blend out there, it's kind of roughly 1 million tonnes of the 1.7 you put through in the June quarter. What's the sort of mined tonnes versus stockpile tonnes that, the percentage we should think about go forward for that? Because it feels like it's a little bit high on the stockpiles at the moment.
Yeah. No, good pick up. And look, if you just simply look at the table on page 3, you can see that obviously everything that we mine from open pit and underground is being fed directly to the plant, and then the delta through the mill is obviously stockpile. So we deliberately targeted, obviously looking at a long game here at KCGM, so we have targeted aggressive mining, and that's why we've had a 49% increase in material moved ex-pit from the asset. So we've come back up the top and really hit that Brown Hill area pretty hard. So we'll continue to do that. We're taking advantage of the fact we have got a nice buffer with that around 22 million tonnes of the low-grade stockpile there, just a nudge over a gram. And that's really about making sure that as that starts to roll out, we're really starting to peak up the open pit ore mining in sort of the next 2.5 years. So really targeting the sort of the medium to long term as part of our strategy at the moment. And again, full information will come out in that as that final release on KCGM.
Okay, thanks, Phil.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Matthew Friedman from Goldman Sachs. Please go ahead.
Well, thanks. Morning, Raleigh. Thanks very much, firstly, to you and your team for taking the time to host the call today. Of course, our condolences and best wishes from our team here as well. I just wanted to ask one question really around KCGM's performance in the quarter. Just looking at cash costs, so, mining cost, processing costs in dollar million terms. looks like it's down around 10% quarter on quarter in absolute terms, and clearly that's despite the higher levels of TMM, as you've highlighted. Any particular drivers to that you think are worth calling out there? Any fixed cost that has already been taken out of that business? Or is that just a function really of the better productivity of the equipment that you've been able to achieve by opening up additional pits? Thanks.
It's a bit of the latter. So Matt, obviously quite a heavy fixed cost site in my experience. So we've been able to increase ex-pit movement by nearly half again, and as far as additional cost to do so, it's next to nothing. So we have taken advantage of that. As far as absolute cost out, a little bit of a COVID factor in there. So obviously, as we sort of wound down, we looked at the areas that we could, non-core and wound those down. Not necessarily saying they'll all spring back up either, because there's been some genuine cost out of our business through just really assessing. Obviously, for a period of time, we've been trying to unpack the business. We're now turning our attention to, elements like the processing plant's a good example, where we've got that down from around $23 a tonne last quarter to just under $20 a tonne now. That's through a combination of obviously higher throughput, but also getting some cost out. And I think there's plenty of opportunity still through the business to, take a comb through it to make sure we try and get some of the cost back to what makes sort of more sense relative to the size of the plants and mining fleet relative to what we're seeing in the other operations. So probably more of that to come still.
Sure, thanks for that, Raleigh. Great to see some early cost out, and again, all the best to your team. Cheers.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Jason Mennell from Kalgoorlie Miner. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Raleigh and team. Congratulations on another good quarter, which has unfortunately since been overshadowed by last week's incident. Raleigh, when talking about last week's tragedy, you sounded quite shaken. What impact has it had on you and the Saracen team?
Look, Jason, should be reasonably obvious, I suppose. This is our first incident of such a matter, and since we've started up, so we are very close, and it's still very raw. So, through the respect of the family, we'll just probably leave it at that. But obviously working through it, and it'll take some time.
And Raleigh, obviously you working with the department at the moment. Have there been any developments since last week?
Yes, we certainly are, and obviously at the first and foremost at the moment we're making sure we're dealing in facts and not speculation. So, as I mentioned at the outset, been really well led from the investigation team on site and very respectful, and obviously we're working together to unpack all the information and dealing in facts. So we've got a safe work environment. We're not going anywhere near anything related to the incident, but we are taking a holistic view, and as we said, we've unpacked our entire business through even completely unrelated areas just to make sure that we get our confidence back and get the confidence back of the operators that it's safe to do so.
Thanks, Raleigh. That's all from me.
Thank you. Your next question comes from David Radcliffe from Global Mining Research. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Raleigh, and morning, Luke. But obviously, like to add our condolences as well. Just a quick question, really, in terms of the growth outlook. You invested about $150 million last year. Maybe if you give us some colour on what the key items could be in 2021, and whether something around the similar level is what you're thinking in terms of expenditure.
Yeah, thanks, David. We are very, very close to putting all this out to the market, so probably can't say too much at the moment, but there are two significant pieces of news flow coming through in August and September around all of that by asset, reflecting on what we've done, obviously what we'll spend, and then most importantly, what it means into the future. So, not much longer to wait now, and we'll be able to put all that into the market.
All right, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, if you wish to ask a question, please press *1 on your telephone and wait for your name to be announced. Your next question comes from Nick Evans from The Australian. Please go ahead.
Yeah, g'day, Raleigh. G'day, Morgan. Just a quick one. Northern Star let its exclusivity lapse on the Newmont power plant that supplies KCGM. Are you guys interested in potentially picking that up, or could it be possible the joint venture itself buys it from Newmont?
Yeah, we're open-minded to that, but if we did anything, it would be very much in consultation and liaison with Northern Star. So there'll be one thing we won't do is buy it ourselves, but other options remain open to us.
Yeah, okay, so it's more likely to be bought by the JV, if not by a third party, but it wouldn't be Saracen on its own. So you're just breaking up a little bit there, yeah? Yep. Yeah,
that's right, Nick. 100% Saracen by its own, no, but other options, yes.
Yep. And just in terms of, I guess, COVID-related costs, are you expecting the costs that you've incurred in terms of, additional staff or the difficulty of getting contractors from the eastern states, that kind of thing, to have any kind of material impact when you disclose your financials a bit later on, or has it been relatively minimal for you?
Oh, look, it's been relatively minimal. We had, obviously, a period where we went to the longer rosters, which net didn't make a huge amount of difference. We obviously had less people on a plane, but then we had less people on a plane, but then we had less planes, obviously, to run with the rosters. So it wasn't a massive change structurally, and we're pretty well back to where we are now. So, we don't expect anything major longer term there.
Thanks, Riley. And my condolences to the Saracen team and to the Blokes family as well. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you. Your next question is a follow-up from Daniel Morgan at UBS. Please go ahead.
Hi, Riley and Tim. It's just a question regarding KCGM and the milling and the grade of the operation has dropped quarter on quarter. Just wondering if you could talk to that. What are the drivers there, and what can we expect?
Yeah, no worries, Dan. So if you just have a look at open pit mining is the main key there. So you can see quarter on quarter, the head grade's dropped from open pit mining, and that's simply because we haven't been down the bottom at Golden Pike. So in very simple terms, we've got limited amount of fleet at the moment. There is a bunch being ordered and to be ordered longer term as part of our growth strategy, which we'll articulate during the month of September. So we've just got limited equipment available to us at the moment. So as I mentioned before, we are looking at sort of the medium long term as well as the short term. So simply we've just been prioritising the fleet that's available to us at the moment in the upper regions around Brown Hill particularly. That's why you've seen a significant increase, circa 50% from mining quarter on quarter. So obviously mining more waste material to getting that strip off the top of Brown Hill. So that's really a strategic sort of path which we'll be able to articulate very clearly to you, the rationale behind that very shortly. As we get back into Golden Pike, obviously that's where the head grade jumps up materially. So we are mining there at the moment, but we had minimal mining in there last quarter.
Yeah, so just a follow-up on that, I imagine that what you're trying to do is hammer the material movements to get more and more access to the pit. And so, that's the focus near term. And so maybe the grade, we can expect more grade variability and potentially lower grades than what's indicative of the medium and longer term future. Would you agree?
Your first statement's correct. We are trying to hammer that down, and obviously as we get more fleet coming to site, we can do both ends. We can maintain the range up the top as well as getting obviously a nice kicker of head grade around 2 grams from the bottom. So that strategy will be dual-pronged just as the equipment starts to come to site. We've literally finished the construction of a excavator 2 or 3 weeks ago, so that's in their mining at the moment. So you'll see more of an impact of that this quarter. In simple terms, we've got a large stockpile, around 22 million tonnes of low grade, about 1 gram. We're looking to utilise that as best we can over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. Whilst we're doing that, hammer down the pre-strip, as you mentioned, such that as that lower grade rolls off and we get into the next category of lower grade stockpiles, we've got a significant ramp up in ex-pit material. So it's just making sure, very similar how we run our business, Carosue Dam, Thunderbox, we think about the future-proofing, the mining strategy. We're about trying to make sure it's consistent over a long period of time, and we're not trying to be heroes in the short term to then have a hole somewhere else.
Right, and I imagine the format of the guidance that's going to come, it sounds to me that it's going to come in 2 parts. There'll be a Thunderbox and Carosue Dam update, which will be guidance, and then the Super Pit is separate in September. So will you be providing Super Pit guidance in that, separately? I guess I'm trying to work out how that's the news flow is going to work.
Yeah, 100% correct there, Dan. So obviously, just with KCGM being us and Northern Star, it's just easier to put that out as a separate announcement. So that's why we'll do that. So we'll do our separate Carissa Dam Thunderbox information, updated R&R guidance for FY21, and obviously all the ingredients will be there through the reserve statement, particularly about what that production profile looks like, updates on milling capacities, those sorts of things. And then likewise at KCGM, we'll be doing our inaugural JORC resource and reserve statement. There'll be a whole swag of information within that statement to enable analysts to sort of map out this project over its life of mine, which is essentially what we've been doing as well as providing more details around the shorter term as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. There are no further questions at this time. I'll now hand back to Mr. Finlayson for closing remarks.
Thank you, Rachel, and thanks again for everyone's time and for your patience. So this is a closing comment, and this is to our people, and more broadly to the people in our industry. Just a message: stay safe, stay strong by staying together, look after your mates, keep up the comms, keep asking yourselves, are you okay? It's a critical tool. Keep up your workplace inspections there to ensure your safety, and know your critical controls around your principal hazards and ensure that they are in place and effective. We've all learnt during our EAP sessions on site, particularly those at Carissa Dam, we know we're going through stages of grief, being denial, anger, bargaining and sadness. It's okay to cry, and then eventually we'll get to acceptance in the months or years ahead. EAP support is available for everyone and their families. Use it. I am. I learned during the week that I'm not a robot, and sometimes you need help, and to make sure you reach out for that help. This will ultimately galvanise us. It'll make us stronger together. And in the words of our on-site rock, Kylie, we've got this. Thank you.